Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Adventures with Andi. Today we're going to dye some yarn using the color mixing triangle exercise, and we're going to use some Wilton's Colorite food coloring to do that. Now this is not the Wilton's Colorite that we have in the kitchen for making cakes and whatever else. No, I happened to grab a box of this at Michael's one day, so I've got this entire thing here just for dyeing yarn. For the yarn, I took a skein of Dyer Supplier Superwash Sport Merino and wound it into 15 little micro mini skeins. If my scale is to be believed, and you know, we gotta take that with a grain of salt because it's got its own view of reality, but these are each about 6 grams. Even if my scale lied to me about the weight on these, they are each 15 wraps on my Yarn Swift, so they should be about the same size. And I had a little tiny bit left over, which is about 1/3 the size of all the others, and we'll use this as sort of a dye mop. Just to wipe up any spills, I'll be wiping my fingers on it as well. I've had the other 14 soaking in water while we got set up to film this, and I'm going to toss this one and this little yarn mop in there now. I've just got this silicone zip tie on this little yarn mop just to make sure that I can tell which one it is, but yeah, it's a lot smaller. Dripping! And I'll continue to let those soak while I explain to you a little bit about what we're doing today. Come on, come on. It's gonna be exciting. Go on in.
It's gonna be exciting.
It's gonna be exciting. Come on in. We have 15 mason jars arranged here on the table, and we've got them set up in a triangle. The way that you do the triangle color mixing exercise is you take 3 colors. In this case, we're going to be using yellow, red, and blue, just our basic primary colors. And you start with 1 color and you put 4 drops or whatever number you're using in the top row, and then 3 drops, 2 drops, 1 drop, and the last row gets none of that color. Move over to your second color, 4 drops, in this case it'll be blue, 3 drops, 2 drops, 1 drop, no blue. 4 red, 3 red, 2 red, 1 red, no red. And this shows you, when you're done, how those different colors mix and the different shades that you can get just using those colors in different combinations. You know, a little bit more yellow, a little bit less blue. How does that shift the color? So that's what we're going to do today. I have put numbers on the top of the mason jars just to help me remember the order that they go in, and I've marked the corners with which color got the 4 drops in that. So 4Y, so that I know this is for yellow, 4B, so I know this is for blue, 4R, so I know that this is 4R. We're gonna do this a cold vat dyeing method. It's gonna be a high of like 70, 72 today, which is really weird because it's the end of December, and although I'm in the South, I'm not that far south. It's unseasonably warm because climate change. So it's not warm enough to do this as solar dyeing, but we can still do cold vat dyeing. You can do cold vat dyeing anytime. So I'm gonna fill each of these jars with just a cup of regular tap water and distribute the food coloring in it. Then I'll take 1 skein, put it in each of the jars, top it off with water as necessary, just to make sure that everything is got enough room to move. We want to try to get this as much of a solid or semi-solid as possible. And then we're going to let it sit for at least a couple of hours before we add any vinegar to it. Depending on what time I wrap this up, it could end up sitting till tomorrow. I don't know. But we definitely want to let it sit for a while before we add any vinegar to it. And then we'll let it set for another day or 2 before we steam heat set it in the crock pot. So, all right, let's get to filling these jars with some water. This one's stuck. You can help.
Okay.
Chad's just standing over here like, what up? You do whatever you want, whatever.
Now you add the magic ingredient.
Water.
Yeah.
And I don't have to be, you know, exact with my measurements on this. It's just 2 dispersers. What'd you do? 5, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Ah! 7, 8, 9!
Oh no.
Oh no! Whoops. I'm in a mess. I'm in a mess.
Never.
Alright, so I've got some water in all of these. And we're ready to start putting the food coloring in. Nice thing about these, as opposed to the icing gels, which is what I've used before, is they're so much easier to mix in because they're liquid. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 1, 1, 1, and nothing in the last row. Now we'll do our blue. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 1, 1, 1, and nothing in the last row. And last our red. And you can start to see how this is going to work. One, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3. That might have been an extra big one, but the red is just kind of gooey. 1, 2, 3. Right?
Mm-hmm.
1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 1, 1, and 1. So our corners are just the one color, yellow, red, and blue. And down along this way, we shift from yellow through green to blue, from yellow through orange to red, and from blue through purple to red. And here in the middle, we get a mix of all 3 colors in differing amounts. They look kind of pretty just like this, don't they? I'm just going to go ahead and stir these up. And of course, as we know, if you don't have, a clean stir implement, utensil, as you're stirring, go from lightest to darkest. Because the tiny little bit of color that we pick up from those is not going to affect these. top, 70s up. And as we know, the amount of water doesn't matter really, other than just giving it room to move. It doesn't change the amount of dye that's available to the yarn. Getting the yarn out, just squeezing it gently, unwinding it and lowering it in. Do you want to do the honor with the last one, Jed?
I think it's going to be blue.
I think it's going to be blue, yes. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's going to be blue.
I think it is. All right, now I'm just going to top the rest of these off with water that need it. And you were worried that I wouldn't have enough room for the yarn.
No, looks like you got more than enough.
I do, because they're really itsy bitsy teeny tiny micro skeins.
Yeah, plenty of room to move around in there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now I just got to put the lids on all these. Now we just let these sit for at least an hour, maybe more. I'll come back and check it in an hour and see if I want to go ahead and add the vinegar at that time or if I want to let it sit longer. So I will be back to see y'all when it's time to add the vinegar. Okay, so we went ahead and let the yarn sit all day and overnight. And now we're going to add some vinegar. Now you can see our dye baths have not exhausted. The yellow's a good one to look. You don't see. You see that one's not exhausted. This one's not exhausted either. I don't want to tip them too far because they'll spill. Apologies for my growling stomach. It's lunchtime and I wanted to get this done real quick before I stop to go eat. So.
Need help delidding?
Yes, we need to make sure that these are all in order. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So we can delid them and know that they're still in order.
Guess they weren't working too hard last night.
Why? Oh, no. I forbid you from saying that. Oh, if you could see the sadness in his face, fine, go ahead and say it. Why weren't they working hard last night? How can you tell?
They're not exhausted.
He is so proud of that joke, though.
You were the first time too. Am I right?
I don't know that I'd say I was proud. I would just say you made that joke. This is the one from the middle, right?
Yes, that one's from the middle.
Do that.
Okay. So this one is from here.
Okay. Hey, I didn't get all that much dye on me.
No. And
this is just plain vinegar. I haven't diluted it with water because we've got a lot of water still in our dye baths. And I'm going to start with just 1/4 teaspoon, sorry, 1/2 tablespoon in each of these jars, and then see if I want to add any more. Did everybody get vinegar?
it looked like it.
Okay. And over here we have our little yarn mop that I've got in some vinegar water already. I'm just going to go ahead and add the rest of it to that because I need to do something with it. All right. Now we put the lids back on. Oh, wait, no, we can't put the lids back on yet. I have to stir this. Just went to the grocery store, picked up some wooden coffee stirrers that I can use to stir this with so that I'm not transferring colors all over the place.
Use your inside muscles.
Why not my outside muscles?
Because then you're missing your skin.
Weird. You got a point. All right. Now we stir. No, let go, darn you. You cannot have that yarn. You have to let it go. I know it's very pretty, but you have to let it go. Thank you. All right. Now we can put the lids back on. Make sure you get the numbers right. Now we just let these sit, probably for 1 to 3 days, I don't know. And then we will put in the crock pot and steam set them. All right, our yarn's been sitting in its jars for, Chad and I are debating whether it's 2 or 3 days. We started this Thursday morning. It's now Saturday afternoon. And it's a little tough to tell, but the dye bath is mostly, but not completely exhausted. There's still just a hair of color in that dye bath water. Most of it's in the yarn, but not all of it. But we have not added any heat yet, and we're going to do that now. This is just water. It's got a little vinegar in it, but that does not matter for our purposes. I had dyed a cake of yarn in here, and then when I was done with that, I heat set some yarn in jars that I'm filming for another video, and now they are all set and ready and cooling, so we're going to go ahead and heat set these. Now you might notice some little specks of white and black stuff down on the bottom. That is not dirt. That is because I ran out of mason jars, and the other jar dyeing video that I am filming this week while I'm doing this, I used like sweet pickle jars and pasta sauce jars, and the labels weren't completely removed from them, so those jars being in the heat, it loosened up the labels and some of the paper came off, and that's what you're seeing in there is just that. It is not going to be a problem for us for what we're doing now, because we're going to be keeping this yarn, all these yarns, in their jars as we heat set them. And the water is already hot because I just pulled that other yarn out of the crock pot. Technically Chad did, because he can handle the heat a lot better than I can. So I'm going to go ahead, and you're probably only going to be able to fit 3 of these in at a time. And it really doesn't matter what order I do them in. Yeah, 3 at a time is going to be what we can handle. There we go. Just fits. The next batch will hopefully fit better because we won't have the one that's got that handle on it. Pop that on here. Since this water is already hot, this should only need to sit for maybe 20 minutes each set, maybe 30. We're going to leave it in until it looks like the dye bath has cleared. Then we'll take it out, let them cool. All right, we'll be back. I am just shocked that all of these dye baths completely exhausted. I figured we'd have some of these that wouldn't exhaust all the way because it was such a small amount of yarn, but check this out. The dye baths are all 100% clear, which means it's time to wash and dry the yarn. And here is our completed color triangle. Check out all these different colors that we got just from mixing 3 of the Wilton Colorite food colors. I've got them laid out here in the same order that they were in the jars. So up here we've got our yellow that had just the 4 drops of yellow and nothing else. Over here we've got our blue, our teal blue that was just 4 drops of blue and nothing else. Here we've got our red, which is 4 drops of red and nothing else. And then the different colors going down, where we go from the yellow, 4 drops, 3 drops yellow, 1 red, 2 and 2, yellow and red, 3 red, 1 yellow, and just the 4 red. So we go through a gradient from yellow through different shades of orange up to our red here. On this side, same thing, but with yellow and blue. So we go from our 4 yellow to 3 yellow, 1 blue, 2 blue, 2 yellow, 3 blue, 1 yellow, and just 4 blues. So we're going through our gradient from yellow up to green. Now, one thing that really struck me immediately with this is how fast it shifts from yellow to a different color. We don't have just a different shade of yellow anywhere here. It goes straight from yellow to orange or yellow to green. So those other colors just completely take out that yellow and shift it from the get-go. Now, one thing I found very interesting is this bottom row here, where we go from our red over to our blue. And you would think that we would have a variation of purples in here, but we don't. We don't actually have a real purple in here anywhere. The 4 red here, when we go to 3 red, 1 blue, we've got sort of a garnet color. Over here where it's 3 blue and 1 red, we get a very pretty navy blue color. And here in the middle where it's 2 red and 2 blue, this is the one that's closest to a purple, but it's still a very navy blue shade. And we got lots of variation in here, but yeah, it's not a true purple. It's more of a navy shade. And that seems like it would be surprising until you take a look at the colors that we're working with there and a little bit of color theory. Our red here is an orange leaning red. You know, it's red for us in this, but if you compare it to this red from Boroco in their vintage line, it looks orange. It does not look red. So it is a yellow leaning red. And our blue over here, this is also a green leaning blue. So both of these colors lean toward yellow. So when you mix them together, you're not going to get a true purple. It's almost kind of like if you were to mix all three colors, which is what we did here in the middle, where you end up with more muted tones. If we wanted to get a true purple, we need to have colors that lean the same direction. So we need to have a red that leans toward blue and a blue that leans toward red, and that would give us a true purple. And you can take a look at it, and we see the same thing here on this swatch that I made with watercolor paints way long ago, which is essentially the exact same thing, just I had more colors to work with. I had 6 instead of just 3. And if we look, our red that we used here, if we compare it up here to our 2 reds, this is transparent orange, which I know says orange, but it's actually a red for watercolor. And this is quinacridone rose, which is also a red for watercolors. Well, if we compare this to these two, it's much closer to the transparent orange, all right? If we compare our blue, and compare it over here to our 2 blues over here, this top one is French ultramarine, the bottom one is phthalo blue. This is much closer to the phthalo blue. Now, if we look at where we mix the phthalo blue with the transparent orange, this is what we get. We get this more navy color right here. You can see the same thing right here. And it's kind of that brownish color, just depending on how much pigment I got on my brushes I was mixing these. If we look at these, I mean, and even if we had had a blue color that was more like this French ultramarine, mixing it with this transparent orange type red gets us more of a muted, dusty, kind of dirty purple. We don't get a vibrant purple. To get a vibrant purple, we need that Quin Rose. And you can see, this one here is the Quin Rose. We get sort of a pinky purple if we mix it with the French ultramarine blue, which is a red leaning or purple leaning blue, and mix it with the phthalo blue, and we get a different purple. So we would have needed a color that was closer to this, a more blue or violet leaning red, as opposed to an orange or yellow leaning red, if we wanted to get a purple. It'd be interesting to try this again and see what we get if we do this exercise using a blue leaning red instead of this orange leaning red. Now here in the middle, we've got our colors where we've got a mix of 3. And we've got 2 that are more green. This one is sort of an olive green. I think it's sort of an like army green, olive green. Reminds me of camo. And this one is more of like a spruce green, kind of more blue. And that makes sense because this one has 1 yellow, 2 blue, 1 red, while this one has 2 yellow, 1 blue, and 1 red. Now this one that has the 2 red, 1 blue, and 1 yellow, like what I was talking about before, this is a very brown color. So if you're looking for brown, that's a way to go. It's a nice kind of walnutty, deep brown. You'll also notice that none of these are a solid color. Even the blue, which I think that and the yellow did the best. We've got some variation in here, and that's just how it's going to be with the way that we dyed these. The yellow probably came out the best. Yeah, it's got very little variation. But the ones where we were mixing 3 colors had the most variation of any of these. And I think that's just because of the different ways and the different rates that the food colorings strike to the yarn. It'd be interesting to try this sometime using commercial acid dyes perhaps and see how that works out. Foreshadowing maybe? Yes, foreshadowing. All right, and lastly but not least, we have our itsy bitsy teeny tiny yarn mop, which I ended up using a little bit for another yarn dyeing that we were doing at the same time. And it's tiny, it's got some very pale colors, a few little specks of red and stuff. That's just it. Anyway, this is what we ended up with. I am not going to knit swatches out of these. For one, because there would be no yarn really left over pretty much in each of these if I were to do that. I might actually knit them up into like a scarf or something to see them, but also because I want to keep them on these cards where I've got listed how I got this color, because that's essentially what you do this exercise for. Not necessarily to dye something that you're going to knit or crochet or weave with, but so you can see, okay, in the future when I'm dyeing, if I want a color like this, what do I have to mix in which proportion to come up with that? This gives me a nice palette to work with out of just those 3 colors of food coloring. Now I can go back and I can do this again using different colors and end up with different shades. I hope this was useful for you and gave you some insight into how colors work, and even into a little bit into how color theory works, not just in painting, but in dyeing yarn, because we're working with colors and we're mixing them. And there are some things we have to keep in mind for that. I encourage you to try this triangle exercise yourself. If you did enjoy the video, if you found it useful and entertaining, please give it a like, give it a thumbs up. That really does help the channel. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe. We do have some other things that we're working on, some that we already filmed while we were working on this, investigating different ways to dye yarn and some different dyes to use on yarn. You don't want to miss that, so again, make sure you're subscribed. In the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you on our next adventure. Bye everybody. Say bye, Chad.
Bye everybody.
Bye.